And we are live. Hello, LinkedIn, YouTube. All right. So glad you're joining us today. It's got a little bit of music. You know I love my music, and I love to dance. So this is Kesha. The song is called Stronger. Absolutely love it. It's such a powerful song.
Hey, LinkedIn. What's shaking?
All right. So I am joined by my dear friend, Nikki Fielding. She is also an influencer on LinkedIn and an amazing human being. And we met several years ago through a mutual friend, and we're on different paths at the time, but it's so interesting how our paths crossed later on. We were both going through something, and we've been able to provide so much support and healing for each other and really be just that space for each other, because some of the things that we have experienced are very similar. And I hope that all of you can find someone like your Nikki out there, because it has been such an impactful part of my life and my healing. So thank you, Nikki, for being here and being a part of my life. I absolutely love you. Going into this whole thing, so we were both talking about how we can come on here and share, collaborate, but also share some of the things that that we have done in our lives and how it's really impacted our lives, but how you can take that and also find some answers for yourself, specifically with migraines today, because if you are a migraine sufferer, you know it is one of the worst things you can ever experience. I mean, I've lost days, months of my life. I know, Nikki, we were talking about this, very similar. And it's just really tough when you are like constantly reliant. For me, I was reliant on a drug in order to get through the migraine, so that otherwise I would be out for 3 days. And that's really debilitating. And then even having the migraines, it was just a constant battle. And if you had migraines, you know that there's the actual, like, the pain that you go through, but then there's kind of like this hangover afterwards too. So it's not like it's 3 days or 2 days or 1 day and it goes away. Like, it kind of lingers with you. So let's go a little bit into our stories. First, Nikki, I'll have you share a little bit of your stories, and then we're going to share some actual things that we have done that have really healed our migraines, and so many other things too. And I know, Nikki, you have found there were so many answers in the steps that you took. So tell us that story.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. And to get started, I just wanted to echo my true gratitude for you. It's been truly a pleasure to witness your journey and to have you in my corner, and just, cheers to the power of community. You have people in your tribe, and I always really admired her and looked up to her, but we just weren't as close at a certain point in time, kind of doing our thing independently. And then the forces conspire and bring you back together. And so it's just, kind of a nod to the power of networking and maintaining relationships. You never know when somebody's going to kind of become a ride or die in your life. So thank you for being such an avid supporter and such a good friend. And I'm really excited for this discussion today. So yes, I suffered with migraines. I would say I usually had them pretty consistently 4 times a year. It could be anywhere from 3 to 6, but usually it was around that marker. And it didn't matter what drug I was on. It was 3 days of complete light sensitivity. Like, I would be vomiting. I could not have a light on. I could not walk my dog. I had dog walkers come in with strict orders: do not turn a light on in my house. Here's where his food is. Here's where his leash is. And it was just get in bed, be on really hardcore medication that provided some relief, but primarily because it just knocked me out. I slept for the 3 days and then it was gone. And then that hangover, that drug hangover would last fogginess for days afterwards. I felt like I was crawling back up out of a cave. And it was really frustrating, not only the pain, but just if 4 times a year, like that's 2 weeks of your life. Like that's some people in the US, like that's their vacation time. Your entire vacation time is dedicated to lying in bed, being in debilitating pain and not having any light. And so I really wanted to look into it. And my journey started in Chicago when I decided to go the holistic route and found a functional medicine clinic that specialized in diet, chiropractor, acupuncture, massage therapy, supplementation, kind of all of those functional medicine practices. And we started doing really intensive blood work, looking at food sensitivities as well as all the markers of inflammation in my blood. So I'll pause there because I know we wanted to share a little bit about the stories before we get into how we attack the healing piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So mine, they actually started when I was taking birth control, and I know they're, if I don't know if they've done any tests, but I would bet that there are like 5 times more women than there are men that have migraines. And I know a lot of it is hormone issues. And I'm going to say a lot of it came from birth control as well. So I was taking birth control for, years, since I was like 18. And the birth control that I was taking went off patent, and Walgreens switched me over to a generic brand they told me about it, but they said it was exactly the same. It was made on the same machines. It was exactly the same. I'm like, okay, so fine. That is when the migraines started happening, and they were very small at first, maybe a day. I would have a really bad headache, and they progressively got worse to the point where it was like 2-3 days. And like you said, like vomiting, couldn't be around people, just literally in bed all day long with the covers over, and just absolutely miserable. And then very similar to what you said, like crawling out of the cave. That's exactly what it felt like. Like, oh my gosh, I got to get, back to the light. And where is that? And it was really tough. And that it got to the point where I was having them every 2 weeks. I would have a migraine. And if I didn't take my drug fast enough, then the migraine would progress and go for 2 to 3 days. And so I was heavily reliant on this medication, sumatriptan, Imitrex, to keep me from having a terrible migraine. And it was miserable. And I went on a journey too of healing. A couple years ago, I was like, I am determined to figure out whatever I need to do. I will invest whatever time, whatever money I need to do to heal these migraines, because I do not want to live like this any longer. And I went to an acupuncturist and did this whole protocol with her. It was literally like, if I can't even remember now, like 3 times a week for 6 weeks, and then every other week, and 3 times a week. And it was, so I was driving like half an hour to get to these appointments, back and forth so many times. And it started to work for the migraines, but then it like totally did something to my hormones. My hormones went berserk. I put on so much weight within just a couple of weeks, and my skin was like breaking out, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. But so much inflammation was going on in my body. And I'm sure there were other things at that time too. So that ended up not working. I ended up having to go on another drug in order to prevent that from continuing. And then I found a holistic hormone specialist. Her name is Amanda Hinman. She's also a friend of mine, and she helps women with their hormone fluctuations and issues. And I did this test. Oh, what is it called? I'm totally blanking on it, but I'll put it in the link below. And I'll put her information in there too. But I did a test, and it gave me this entire reading of my hormones and where everything was at. And she was able to look and tell me what supplements that I needed, because she could see how everything was interacting. And at the end of the day, your hormones control so much of what goes on in your body. Hormones are, I know you're going to talk a little bit about gut health. Hormones are impacted by gut health. It's all tied together. So even though we think like the migraines are up here, there's something going on in our body and everything is tied together. So it's really going down a path of discovering what that is for you, because everyone's a little bit different. For me, magnesium was one of the ways that she saw that I needed to take magnesium. I was not taking any. I now take 400 milligrams a day. And that has made a huge impact in my life, just that one supplement. But we'll go into a little bit more detail, and I'm going to let you take over again and continue on your story of what you found with your health discovery.
Yeah. So when I made it to this clinic in Chicago, who is now a dear friend of mine, Dr. Frank Sutter, he's currently living his best life in Amsterdam, so a little hard to reach for the American, but find him online. He also is part of the public health for Harvard Business School as well. So he's still very influential in the health field and was just such a tremendous educator for me. And so sharing my story with him in the holistic realm, that was the first time. I had worked with some holistic doctors and had acupuncture. I have quite an extensive health surgery with some near-death experiences, 65 surgeries and procedures, like really severe things. So I had exposed myself to all forms of healing. But being with somebody consistently over time was really starting to weave my story together in a way that made sense. And I was like, oh, like when I have stomach issues, I go to the GI and they prescribe XYZ or diagnose me with this. And then I have migraines and I go to a specialist and I get referred to a neurologist. And I was so disjointed. I was kind of forgetting, well, we're only one person, even though I always had some understanding and worked somewhat in the holistic field. I was just kind of falling for the story of the Western medical system, which is amazing. I wouldn't be alive without it. So I do want to make that clear. I've had some of the most incredible doctors who have truly performed miracles with me, but the way that the system is structured really segments you into disconnected and disjointed pieces. And that's just not the reality of who we are. It's mind, body, spirit. We are one being. And that all affects what is showing up in our physical body. And so through listening to my story, he educated me after in 2000, I had a severe accident and was in the hospital for about 10 days. And I was given an IV antibiotic, which we knew very soon caused a severe reaction for me. I was back in the hospital. I think I was discharged and within a week was back in with a C. diff infection, which ultimately is like one of the most severe, just completely wipes out all good bacteria in your gut. And to the extent that I was in the hospital again for 7 to 8 days. So it's a very severe infection. We later learned it also caused some other things, but we were there battling that. And I had had some gut health issues growing up, but since that, I just really never recovered. I had all sorts of immune-related conditions, autoimmune-related conditions. The migraines started after that, hormonal issues, needing to remain on birth control. Everything kind of started spiraling from that experience. And I didn't really have the aha moment until much later that it was directly connected. But he's helping me understand that. And so we started with inflammation. He's like, you have so many inflammatory markers in your blood. He's like, it's concerning for somebody who has the lifestyle that you do, because we spent a lot of time together. So he knew that I was very healthy and exercising and ate a pretty clean diet, or what I considered a clean diet at the time. And we did food panel testing, food sensitivities, and really started to understand how incredibly reactive I was to certain foods. So the normal ones that people are aware of, like dairy is inflammatory for almost everybody. It's delicious, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't always serve us. Gluten for me was severely inflammatory. Eggs is another common one that was, again, for me, a huge, huge inflammatory marker, and a few others. And we started doing diets. And through this protocol of off and on, like what some people may call the Whole30, I started to realize the power, how drastically different I felt within 30 days of eliminating foods that were specifically inflammatory to me, as well as like the known culprits. Like we all know, we just don't want to go without them. Alcohol, tobacco, sugar, caffeine. And tobacco we go without, but like that caffeine, you want to get up and have a cup of coffee. And I was always inconsistent with it. I knew it hurt my stomach. I who doesn't love a latte?
Mhm.
But by really doing that protocol a few times, I noticed I could almost transform my reality in terms of my skin looked better. I had more energy. I was sleeping better. And I didn't do anything else change. I usually lost weight and I was not changing anything. If anything, I might be working out a little bit less. So that was kind of an aha moment of, for me, the power of food as medicine and really digging into a more holistic approach about where I'm getting my food. Because guess what? We did those really intensive blood testing. I don't have a gluten sensitivity. I have a Monsanto sensitivity. I'm a very sensitive constitution, and it's a very toxic chemical. And like I've been diagnosed with asthma, but it is again only related to certain toxins in the air that will trigger that kind of breathing. I've never had an asthma attack not exposed to toxins or related to exercise or any form of activity. So I was starting to realize that my constitution and knowing I'm an empath and a highly sensitive person, that was transferring into the world of there's so many toxins in our environment and around us, and me really starting to dig in and educate myself on everything from food, beauty products, what candles I'm using, toxic scents, just everything that we consume. Ultimately, unfortunately, in our country is designed for profitability versus health and sustainability. And so I started to make that conscious shift into how can I clean up the amount of toxins I'm exposing myself to, and where am I sourcing food, and developing relationships in some cases with local farmers and CSAs, shopping at markets. I have neighbors, like they'll even post like, I've got extra collard greens, and I ride my bike right over there with a bag and throw the collard greens in, and then, bring them a beautiful bouquet of flowers and just really like be a part of the community in that way. So again, I'll pause there because I know you had some exciting supplements, and that was a part of my journey. But I found the power of food itself, both being very conscious about what you're consuming as well as mindset around it. So I realized if food is medicine and food has the ability to heal me, a lot of us bless our food. Some people do. Some people say the same thing every day. Some people do it mindlessly. I started to really put intention. Where intention goes, energy flows, right? Like we all kind of understand that belief. Like it starts with your intention, awareness, and then you start to try behaviors and habits, and eventually it's a lifestyle. So I developed a mode of blessing my food that I'll share, that I just ask. Like I really tap into gratitude and thank the food. Like these plants gave their life to sustain mine. And I thank every being involved in bringing from its original form as a seed or whatever it was to my plate, whether they're the truck driver or the harvesters. There's so many beings involved in this that we can express our gratitude for their time and energy. And then I ask to bless it to the nourishment of my body. And I affirm our thoughts create our reality. So part of my shifting my belief was I affirm that eating this is all I have to do to heal myself, mind, body, and spirit, and release all physical inflammation from my body. And then if you want to call on a higher power and pray in anybody's name, that's up to everybody's belief system. But I do that before every single meal to really infuse it with my energy and intention of healing. And that has rapidly accelerated my progress with food as medicine.
Oh, I love that. I've never done that, but I am so going to start doing that because I've seen the power of thought and how it literally changes, you manifest things. One question I wanted to ask you is, you mentioned inflammatory markers in your blood. What are those? Can you explain a little bit about that? Like, do you know like what it was that he saw that was a marker?
I'll try to remember the best I can. If I had the blood work, I can point it out, but it's some like medical terms that just I'm very, very knowledgeable in healing the emotional and spiritual layers of our energetic body. The physical is not something I've studied, but I'll share some. So I had thyroid issues off and on, like a lot of markers of autoimmune conditions. My thyroid would spike. We could get it under control, but it was just inconsistent. My blood levels, so on blood tests I had like lymphocytes and monocytes, like they're even signed, they thought I had blood cancer, so they were pretty sure I had this rare form of blood cancer at one point. My liver enzymes were as high as, like they asked me, they called me in and they said, we only see this with somebody with cirrhosis of the liver or hepatitis. And I was like, I don't have either. I don't know what to tell you. I was like, I barely drink. my kidney levels were elevated. Like I was diagnosed and labeled with stage 1 kidney disease. So it was kind of looking at what I call in layman's terms, because I can't remember like the monocytes, lymphocytes, like all of the different terms. But what I called, it was stemming from adrenal fatigue. So the overtaxing of chronic stress and unhealed trauma was affecting my kidneys, which then backs up into, if your kidneys aren't functioning, can affect your bladder, but then it will back up into liver and other organs, and almost always ties into the thyroid and autoimmune and the hormonal issues, because that endocrine system is your pituitary, your hormones, your thyroid, all of those things that kind of derive how are we showing up, how are we feeling, how much energy do we have on a day-to-day basis. So all that to say, it changed with time, but the things that were off in my blood may be different from month to month or year to year, but every doctor kept saying, this is an indication of inflammation. This is an indication of inflammation. So I knew that regardless of what was off at that point in time and maybe what system I had inflamed, I was dealing with a lot more inflammation in my body and resulting conditions. I had multiple chronic nerve pain conditions, and kind of my nervous system was so taxed from this living in chronic stress, combined with not eating the foods that served my body and what it really needed to feel its best.
Yeah. And I just want to point out too, like going through that, you have all these diagnoses, like for anyone, hearing those things, it would be traumatic. I mean, that in itself, like, oh my gosh, I have like cirrhosis of the liver, like, all the things that you said, like kidney disease, and oh my gosh, like, and then going back to like the mindset. So if people are telling you this and you start believing it, then what happens? Your body just continues to go in the wrong direction. But yeah, having that holistic doctor to really show you like, this is all intertwined and there's something here. And I want to point out too, that what you said about adrenal fatigue, when I did my hormone test, that was the major thing that came out of there was adrenal fatigue. My adrenals are just shot. And going back to, we'll get into this next, is the unhealed trauma. So understanding that like I was constantly like stressing my body out without even realizing it, because of unhealed trauma that was still there and causing all of these subconscious beliefs that I needed to do more and I needed to be more. And, so I was always just like running until I couldn't run anymore. And then I get depleted, and then I just go and do it again and never take a step back and do what my body needed. I never even considered that. So yeah, adrenal fatigue. And going back to the supplement. So magnesium was one. There were several other ones, but like I said, I'm going to tag Amanda Hinman in here. I'm also going to tag the test that I took, and you guys can take a look at that. Having someone translate that test, I think, is very important. That's something that she can do, because I looked at it and I could not tell you what any of it said. It literally looks like a different language, but if you have someone who can translate it, that's extremely helpful. Okay, so let's get into the unhealed trauma, because I know that this is something that has really shifted for me. So having the magnesium has helped tremendously, but there was, and I've shared a lot of this on LinkedIn here. So if you're not familiar with me, like you can go look at some of my more recent posts, and I've talked a lot about trauma that I've healed in the past few years, but even more so in the past like 6 months. And that was working with a coach, Carly, she's amazing, who's really helped me heal that trauma. Nikki has helped me tremendously as well. There have been a lot of people that I have surrounded myself with that have really helped me get to this point. But I will say that was like the final thing that I really needed to do in order to heal my migraines, was healing that trauma from the past that was causing all of this anxiety and subconscious beliefs that were driving how I was living my life without me even knowing it. Like I was not in the driver's seat. I am now. And that was causing adrenal fatigue, which was then part of my hormone issues and the imbalance in my body. So healing that has now allowed me to heal my adrenals. But I've also made changes. Like I don't drink coffee anymore. I drink mushroom coffee. Mud water is the one I drink. Love it. Very little amount of caffeine, but also so many health benefits with it. And then changing the way I eat too. I cut eggs out of my diet, most of the dairy out of my diet, gluten, and it has made a tremendous difference. Cut down on the amount of alcohol that I drink, except for last weekend. But yeah, it's just everything, like all these different choices, what you were saying has made a difference when it comes to food, but also understanding what's going on with my body. That was the first step. So do you want to share anything about the journey with unhealed trauma for you and how that made a difference?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough to truly be able to heal my migraines with the inflammation and primarily diet, some supplementation. Like that had healed, but it was kind of an aha moment that it wasn't healing all of the systems in my body. And I named all of those diagnoses plus more. Like I had a blood clot in my splenic artery. I was diagnosed with an iron overload disorder that had chronic toxic deposits in my brain and multiple systems. Like these things were getting so bad. I had to throw my hands up and say, I have to do whatever it takes. Like I have to heal, because not only was my physical body falling apart and getting to the point where doctors were sobbing and saying, you're dying and I can't figure out why. Like I'm having a hard time letting you walk out the door. Everything in me, my intuition and my ethics is screaming that you're dying, but I can't find a medical reason for it. And the toll that that takes on your mental health, along with like what we're all going through, just we're living through some really challenging times to be alive that have brought up unhealed trauma, whether acute, chronic, complex, or generational. Like it's brought it to the forefront, demanding to be healed. And the longer we ignore it, the more physical manifestation you have in it. So I've experienced, like we all have, a decent amount of trauma in my life, and my I wouldn't say unwillingness, but just not being knowledgeable about how to truly heal myself and free from it. I was in therapy. I was doing all the traditional things that you're told to do and made some progress, but it never really shifted to, I feel better and I feel free of this belief system. I have let it go and left it in the past. And so that's where I started really diving into working within my belief systems and healing trauma through shadow work, inner child healing, really embodying self-love and understanding that those beliefs, everything is energy. That is a scientific fact. Our thoughts, our emotions, our tables, everything is energy. That energy within the body, there's only so much space. I'm a pretty small person. You know me, I'm like a little pixie. There's only so much space. So when I'm sitting there saying, I'm sick, I'm so sensitive, food makes me sick, I have this label, that label, all of that space is taken up, where I could be choosing to believe something more powerful, but I'm not able to embody it because I'm like, well, who am I to believe that? And I'm not worth it anyway. And it's not going to work for me. All those limiting beliefs. So I started working with coaches, mentors, and really educating myself. Having had 65 surgeries and procedures, there's a lot of recovery time, and a lot of that is lying in bed. Most of mine were on my feet or my back, and you have to be lying in bed. So I figured, I can't necessarily read, like, you're on painkillers. So I couldn't read the most in-depth books, but I relied on like podcasts and YouTube and video as a channel, instead of just like, I would give myself one or two like fun Netflix series after a surgery. But that was like the first couple weeks. Like I would binge watch and get through one. And then the rest of it, I was like, what can I learn? What can I educate? How can I come out of this a better person? Even if nobody else really cares about what I'm learning, like, and I'm not shouting it from the rooftops, I'm going to learn things that I'm passionate about and take this 3 months where I have to spend most of my time in bed and come out kind of an expert in a certain area. And for me, a lot of that had to do with spirituality and alternative healing and medicine and the power of crystals, metaphysics, and what some people would call woo. But what I've really dug into the research behind the woo. Why does it work? And it's a combination of, there is starting to be ownership that these things really work from a scientific basis, but it comes down to, the easiest way to describe it is the placebo effect. Placebos work. That is medically proven in medical trials. The placebo group will typically have not as significant of improvements, but will also improve. If the drug helps the control group, or forgive me if I'm messing up the scientific terms, but the one who's actually getting the drug, if they improve, the placebo group will improve. And so people have really dug in and studied that. That is the power of beliefs. If you're handed something that you believe will make you better, even if it's a sugar pill, it will. And so that's where I extrapolated, okay, I'm going to dig in and go ham on my belief systems and really understand. And that looked like a lot of sobbing, a lot of like admitting things I didn't want to admit about myself, really coming to terms with I didn't love myself that much. I had a lot things I thought I was doing to take care of myself were more forced. It was like, did you work out 5 times this week for at least an hour at a time? Mm-hmm. Check. And if not, you're lazy. Versus now I'm like, what does my body need today? Does it need a workout? Does it need to stretch? Does it need to rest? I really feel into and listen to my body, but I wasn't able to do that without removing some of those trapped emotions, the stress, the blame, shame, anger. That's the name of the game. Like you have to really reach forgiveness and free yourself from those things versus letting your past define you and hanging on to it. So I started shifting that, like what sparks joy? It doesn't matter if it's as simple as watching a butterfly fly by, like being present and stopping and breathing into that and being like, what a beautiful moment this is to participate in. And then letting that type of momentum carry you into bigger areas in your life. But that has been such a beautiful part of my journey. And I know you've really kind of witnessed me go down that. And it's been, in some ways I've been very public, but there was a long time where I was very, very private about me really identifying like, what's behind my belief systems? Why is it there? Why am I holding on to it? What are the different modalities to release myself and free myself from it? And then how can I use the space created to not change my way of thinking? I think I already had done the work. Like I said, all this research about food as medicine, movement as medicine, alternative healing. I had already done the research and had the knowledge. I had no space to embody the belief that my knowing that and my belief and choosing, I am healed, I am healthy, I am whole, and divine healing is mine. It belongs to each of us. All we have to do is believe. There are some physical things you have to follow with changing and determination and discipline, but like really believing that in every fiber of my body skyrocketed. I was almost dead in February of 2021, I was medically discharged from a PTSD treatment center and who had a full-time medical staff and hospital room. They said, you're beyond the scope of what we can treat. I was going to the ER every night. They referred me to a specialist and said, good luck. And I was like, I have no choice. It's now or never. Like either I get to, because it's all up here. It was my chronic stress that was causing that. My stress was actually physically killing me. We all say stress kills, but I was watching it. I was only able to drink liquids because I could feel food spurting out of, I would feel the liquid, like the smoothie spurting out of my intestines internally. And I was like, I don't know what to do. So I just kept drinking, but that malabsorption, I was losing weight. I was about 20 pounds less than I am now. It was truly terrifying. Like I knew I was dying and every doctor said you're dying. But if they did tests, they would be like, yeah, everything's off, but nothing's off enough to indicate this. And that comes down to our belief systems and the mind and emotional, mental health component of our physical health. Physically, I wasn't meant to be dying right then. It was easy to turn around when I was able to address the emotional, mental, and spiritual component of what was really, really weighing on me and what was really dragging me down and making me sick.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that you shared that. And I know I was watching you, witnessing all of that take place, and so proud that you're here now. And it's incredible to see how beautiful, and love that you focus on joy on the same way. One of my favorite posts of yours is the squirrels that were just like a whole tribe of squirrels just surrounding you and following you on your dog walk. It was so adorable.
My babies.
Yeah, they were so cute. But yeah, that just shows you like when you really embody the joy and the light. But in order to do that, because there were times where even dancing, right? Like I talk about dancing, how good it is for raising your vibration. But there are times where like I was so down that I couldn't. I mean, I could dance, but like it didn't make any shift at all. I really did not feel better because there was still things that I needed to heal. And most recently I did some shadow work, and I didn't even know what that was, my shadow self. But previous to that, it was literally like pulling back layers of an onion and realizing, like, first of all, what were my beliefs? And then where did those beliefs come from? And then where, like, what was the stem of that? I mean, it literally was like getting down to the core. And then once we did that, I released all that. And to the people in my life who were a part of that, who are still in my life, like, I released all the shame and blame and anger towards that person, towards myself. And then got to the point of the shadow work. And a lot of that, pulling back the layers of that onion, was going with the inner child and just releasing all of the things that I learned when I was younger that continue to perpetuate these subconscious beliefs and be in the driver's seat. Like, I realized, like, for majority of my life, I've not even been in the driver's seat. It's been my subconscious beliefs. So incredible to see now, like, to have this power. And even when something happens in my life, you know, whether it's like in the public eye, I can choose what I believe about that because I'm in the driver's seat now. Like, I can choose to look at it as like, oh my gosh, the doom and gloom and blame and shame and anger. Or I can choose to look at, like, what is the benefit of this? Like, what is coming out of this? And yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in our world right now. And for all of those things, there are so many good things happening too. And that's really what I try to choose to look at. And I share on social media too, because the media doesn't cover the good stuff. They cover the bad things because that's what gets people to read. And then what happens? Like, people read it and then they are then full of fear because of all the things that are being reported. But there are so many great things out there that are happening. And if you start opening your eyes to it, you'll see more and more. And it really kind of releases all of that fear, just knowing that, you know, we're all going to be okay. And that we have the power to decide that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mention dancing because it's such powerful medicine. And it was a big part of my healing journey as well. I actually have a quote that I put into a Canva graphic I was thinking about sharing, but I'd love to read it. I dug into some shamanic cultures and work with my mentor, Courtney Bowman of Wholesome Alchemy, who is amazing with transformational retreats, has studied in India, healed herself of cancer using Ayurveda, yoga, and various tribal healing modalities. So she has been like a wealth of knowledge and has courses and whole retreats about the embodiment of love and empowering belief systems. But this quote is, in many shamanic societies, if you came to a medicine person complaining of being disheartened, dispirited, or depressed, they would ask one of 4 questions. When did you stop dancing? When did you stop singing? When did you stop being enchanted by stories? And when did you stop finding comfort in the sweet territory of silence? And that quote is Gabrielle Roth and really speaks to me because it is the simple things in life. Like, if we are happy and at our highest and best self, we want to dance, we want to sing, we want to have fun, we want to be kind. We're okay with that silence. I feel like I was so full of my trauma and emotions I didn't want to confront. I couldn't sit with it. I was so full, I had to become a meditation coach and practitioner because I couldn't force myself to do it anymore. I'd been a long time meditator and I was just I couldn't. I was at my brink. I couldn't sit in that silence and go inwards and connect. And so I really had to dig into that healing. But I think all of those, there is no one size fits all healing. There's so many modalities available to us and so many amazing coaches, mentors, guides to walk you through that process. It really starts with choice. You know, the energy healing was a big component for me, working with Reiki and angelic healing and shamanic healing practices. Again, like, as a sensitive person, it's hard to describe what you feel because everybody processes energy differently, but it's like going versus therapy where I would have a list of things and understand and comprehend, okay, this is why you're feeling that way. These are the emotions behind it. And this is what your toolkit is. And this is what you should be feeling. I never made that final step. I got to the toolkit. Okay. Like, I know what to do if I'm having symptoms of anxiety or panic and I can breathe, but I never got to that feeling better. And with energy healing, it was wild because you'd be on a table and just by a person's intention and transfer of energy, I'd be experiencing colors and visions and tingling and ASMR feelings and warmth. And I would know exactly where their hands were over me. And I started thinking like, well, yeah, like think about a massage. Like our hands are so powerful healing. Like, why do we love going to the hairdresser? The best part is when they massage your head in the shampoo bowl. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm in heaven. And go to a massage. And why are so many nurses and massage therapists certified in Reiki to enhance their healing abilities? So I really looked at like, how do you throw the book at it naturally with movement as medicine, finding joy in it? What do you love? Like that to me is how we connect into our body, because our body ultimately is the guide. We just have to help each other because we weren't conditioned. We were kind of programmed not to. You hit the nail on the head. Like the news, everything we consume is designed to make us sick and live in fear. And I truly believe that with all my heart. I haven't watched the news in years and years and years. I don't have television. I will not digest it because it is designed to disempower us. And we have a choice to take back that power. I do procure my own news and try to keep an idea of what's going on in the world and seek different sources. But anything that's mainstream media, it's all like our healthcare system. It is all a system that's designed to flaw. I know amazing people within that system who truly believe in what they're doing and are good-hearted people, but the system is designed to minimize us, to keep us sick, to keep us in states of fear, and to take our money, candidly. Because if you're sick, there's going to be a lot of money invested. If you're sick, there's a lot of money to be made in that healthcare system, a lot of profit. Versus telling you, did you know you can heal yourself by dancing and by eating really good food and eliminating toxins? And there's an app, Think Dirty. I think Think Dirty, Shop Clean. Like that was a starting place where I educated myself on like what ingredients are in our beauty products and our cosmetics and all of those things. So true healing is available at all of our fingertips.
P-Man.
Little P-Man.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. This was wonderful. If there are any like resources you want to share, you can share in the comments on the LinkedIn posts, and that way people can go and tap into those as well. And I will do the same. And if any of you have questions about the healing that we've done or the foods or anything, please reach out to us and we're here to help. We're sharing this because we know there's so many out there who need to hear this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Megan, and wishing you all a beautiful and blessed day. I will drop some resources, some favorite books, and people who've really transformed my awareness in the comments.
Great. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.